myself single and unexpectedly pregnant. I had no idea what to do, so within an hour I marshaled all of my resources, got 8 people into my kitchen to decide if I could go through with this. Until you see those lines on a pregnancy test, you have no idea how your stomach can plummet to the soles of your feet and the world that you imagined no longer exists. I didn't realize it at the time, but there was a woman in that resource circle that I gathered in my kitchen who'd had to make the decision about whether or not to keep her baby too. The first time I had sex, I was 17. And I got pregnant my senior year of high school. And my mother said to me, "You are not going to have an abortion." I knew what abortion was. I didn't know how it was performed or how to get one, had no sexual awareness, no sex education in schools whatsoever. My mother had been a Baptist, very Christian, didn't believe in talking about sex, was so shocked and upset by my pregnancy, she put me in a home for wayward girls. It was 1965. It wasn't until I got into that home that I saw these graphs and pictures of how babies are born, and I was going, "Oh my God, I had no idea how that happened." I loved being there. It was great. I had a ball. It was 7 blocks from the Haight-Ashbury. I used to prop the broom in the kitchen door and sneak out at night. I was the troublemaker there. The other girls were supposed to be vacationing in Florida. They had these tanning lights so they could go back to Iowa with a tan. After Heather was born, I was very happy. I decided that I wanted to keep the baby. My counselor was going, "No, you don't want to." And I was like, "Yes, I want to. I really do." I kept it for 6 weeks at home. It's a lot of work to have a baby. It's not easy. I was 17, you know. I wanted to go out with my friends. I couldn't. They didn't have these little car seat thingies you could just carry around. I used to hitch carrying this big, huge fucking bassinet. But there was a defining moment. She was in her crib. She was clean, she was fed, she was dry, and she was screaming her head off, and I picked her up and I said, "Why did you stop crying? Why don't you just shut up?" So I called the counselor and she said, "This is the beginning of resentment and it doesn't get better. It only gets worse." So it was an aha moment for me. I realized I had nothing to offer this child. I had high school education, I didn't have a job, I'd have to live with my mother. I could just see that I would live there, but she would be raising it. When I was really young, my mother was so, she was so hip and with it. She was fun and exciting, and she wore bright red lipstick, and then she got God, and all that went away. She got mean and contracted and angry, dowdy and frumpy. And I didn't want my child to be raised like that. So a part of me always knew I wasn't going to be a good mother. A part of me knew, that I was really sad because I wanted to keep the baby, but the biggest part of me knew giving her up was the right thing to do. So one day I took the clothes and the bottle and the bassinet and I hitched to the Children's Home Society in Oakland, and I talked to the lady and I said, "I want to sign the papers." And I did. And when I got back, my mom got home and she said, "Where's Heather?" And I said, "I signed the papers." And she said, "You have a week to get out." The next time I was pregnant, it was with my husband, Chance. We performed together in the clubs. We were great dancers. Really good. It was just one of those, I was late, and I told Chance I think I might be pregnant, and we got on with our lives. A couple, maybe 4 weeks later, I realized that I still hadn't gotten and then the really heavy period came. It's clumpy and lumpy, and I brought Chance into the bathroom, and I pointed to the toilet, and I said, "I think that's your baby in there." Then I got pregnant with Dante in Hawaii, and we had rounds about keeping it, not keeping it, and it was like, I didn't want to have the baby. I knew he wanted to have the baby, but it was going to be in my fucking body, and I didn't want to do that because I already knew what that felt like. So he didn't come with me, and it was very sterile and cold, and I remember cold things being put inside me, and it was just like, get it out, I never looked back at it with regret, never. The second one was in 1974, and it was my last tour of Japan. The guy, Rick San, the assistant to the agency that I was with, was, the one, and so it couldn't have been more different. It was civilized. And you went into a clinic, and you signed in, and you filled out the necessary paperwork, and you left your shoes at the door, right? And they gave you a private room so you didn't have to see other people, and it had a TV and a telephone and a refrigerator and chairs, because, the families would come in and be with the women when they had this to support them and whoever was doing this. It was almost warm, like they were kind to you. It was actually a pleasant experience. I think it was like my 40s, and my mother asked me if I had ever gotten pregnant again, and I said yes. I had 3 miscarriages and 2 abortions, and she got really, really sad, because I think she really wanted to be a grandmother. The hardest to recover from was the adoption, because it had the longest term effect on me. I think I kept it more of a secret because it was mine. It was mine. Something I did. It wasn't a shameful secret, it was just an accomplishment. Sometimes I would have these fantasies, and it would have been like if I would have kept her, we would have been besties, I would have been a single mom, and we would have been good friends. I had this picture that I kept for the longest time. I've tried really hard to forget, but you can't really forget once an embryo's been inside of you, And now I hear these things about, fetal tissue, and like how it stays around in your body. So like, that means that I have all of my babies in here with me. Like, they're like a part of me. It's really healing. It was kind of, like a love relationship. My boyfriend and I were going to marry, and I was born in a Muslim family, so my family were religious, and so there's no conversation about pregnancy or sefta-janin or abortion or miscarriage. I was working as feminist and I was activist in Iran's women's rights, so I had some kind of conscience about that. So I was doing peshkadi as borderi, the pill. But after a while, I saw that I was waiting for menstruation, and so I told my boyfriend I was suspicious that I was getting pregnant. And having sex outside marriage in Iran is illegal, is against the law and religion. So the only sanction abortion is when you are a married woman and you are in danger or at risk, and the fetus must be less than 4 months. So we had a good relationship, and he was very supportive, and then he was rich somehow, so he found a doctor, and it was kind of relationship with the family. It took 2 to 3 weeks to get everything done, but in the time I was thinking, how much I maybe want to keep the baby, because I was, kind of feeling like was not alone. So it was easy. So the doctor examined me, and he prescribed, some kind of fake disease for the fetus. and then we took that prescription to the hospital, and they do the curettage, and there was no problem or question because we had this thing arranged by the doctor. It wasn't very sad because I was thinking I had this kind of support and that my boyfriend and I were going to marry. The third time it happened, I was working in a new job and I was releasing depression and I wasn't very conscious about my body, and I was dating this guy, a very cute guy, 5 years younger than me. It was a relationship sex. And when I told him that I think I was getting pregnant, he said to me, "You bitch, you prostitute," and he left, and I had no support and no money, and I didn't know what to do. So all the time I'm thinking I can escape, and I'm selling everything, and I quit my job, and I crossed the border, and then what? I was making connection with this baby because I was thinking I want to keep the baby, but the guy was crazy and crappy guy, but I was thinking maybe I like this baby. So I went to the surgery, and then after the doctor said, "You are safe. You have no problem now, you are fine." I am feminist and I try to defend everything that helps women, and I respect autonomy and make decision and make choice, but in the case of abortion, I think I am against abortion, maybe because of my experience. Being a feminist, you think that you can do many things in your life, but it is not always so easy. I was so resist society, resist my family, but you can't resist all those barriers. Abortion is very public. It's not private, it's a very public issue. I was about 17 weeks pregnant, and I'm on the table, and the ultrasound technician was very quiet, and the perinatologist comes in, and he looks, and I know something is wrong. He says, "There's big patches on your baby's brain that shouldn't be there, and he might have brain damage or hydrocephalus, and we need to get the radiologist in to look." And while I'm waiting for the radiologist to come in, this this asshole comes in and starts talking to my husband, who's also a psychiatrist, and so they're talking about who they knew in medical school together. And I don't know who I'm more angry at. The perinatologist or my husband for carrying on this conversation when we've just found out something is very wrong with our baby's brain. But I didn't have a voice. I felt myself becoming more and more angry. I just couldn't find words. So finally, the radiologist comes in and said, "Let's just go ahead with the amnio." And I was like, I knew it was bad. Like, whatever, just stick the damn needle inside me and just stick it in my heart. Because I know this isn't going well. And I was just numb, and they did the amnio, and they said, "You'll have to speak to the genetic counselor," and blah, 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 and I didn't really hear anything. It was like I'd been hit by a truck. The doctor, he was so warm, and he said, "I wish I had better news, but your baby has a variation of Dandy-Walker syndrome, and it's very rare, and your baby's genetics are perfect, just something happened during development." And he gave us all of these percentages, like the majority of these babies expire, and if they should make it to term, they usually die in childbirth, and if they should survive, your percentage of making it to 3 months is very small. I'm like, if we win the lottery. I actually felt like the choice was already made with all the medical information that he gave us. It would be the more humane thing to do. I didn't like to think about, me waiting for him to die. It seemed cruel to him. It was cruel to me. And there were risks for me to carry the pregnancy on too. So I was 19 weeks and 5 days when the procedure took place. Now there's only one doctor in the area who does this. He's very sweet. And he said, "I'm really sorry that this has happened to you." And he pulled out this box of photographs and he said, "These are all babies of people who have been here in your position before." And he knew that this was a wanted baby and how painful it was. And it kind of gave me a little bit of hope. But at the same time, when I saw those pictures, I was like, I just want to get the fuck out of here. I don't want to come back. I want to come back when I have a baby and I can give you one of those pictures. I thought, holy shit, there's only one person who does this procedure in this area? And I live in a major metropolitan city. He's old. What's going to happen when he dies? Who's going to do this? So we went to the exam room, and he explained what would happen. And they put the stuff in your cervix to soften it so it'll be easier to take the baby out the next day. But what they didn't tell me, or they may have told me and I didn't process the information, is that they're going to give me a shot into the stomach of digoxin, which immediately stops the baby's heart. I didn't know that. In some ways, I'm glad I didn't know. In some ways, I wanted to take that needle and shove it right up the guy's ass. I was like, I thought this was going to happen tomorrow, that this was just like the pre-procedure. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. You're never ready to say goodbye. I said a little prayer, and then he did it. I just cried, and I felt so bad that this baby was dead inside of me, and I have to go home and wait for the Lemuria to work so I can come back the next day. And I'm like, could you just take a big ice auger and just rip out my life? When I woke up in recovery, my husband was there and I was crying and I still felt pregnant. It was horrible and emotional, but there was this sweet nurse. She was so nice. She was very grandmotherly. I'll never forget her because she would say, "It's going to be okay, dear." Like she's a part of my baby's story. I feel very cautious about who I can tell the truth to. Only a few people in my immediate family and my brothers know. I knew that he was alive inside of me. And that I was giving him life, and that if he came out, he wouldn't be alive. And I was okay with that. So the guy that I had been dating said that you're going to get an abortion, right? I mean, you're a feminist, right? You're okay with that. I'm like, yeah, I'm a feminist. That means I have a choice. I can make the choice to either keep the baby or not keep the baby, or go through with the pregnancy or not go through with it. And I decided I'm going through with the pregnancy. Turns out in the end, I didn't have a choice. When I was 6 months pregnant, the baby died. His heart stopped beating. I marshaled all of my resources to come together to help me get through something I'd never had any idea how to experience. My best friend was a labor coach and a doula, and she'd been at the birth of a friend of ours when their baby was stillborn. I never wanted to hear that story before. So as soon as I found out, I was about 8 weeks pregnant, and I put it up on Facebook, and people are always saying, like, don't say anything. And I remember thinking, why not? It doesn't matter if I make it out of the safe zone of the first trimester, if I lose her at 10 weeks or I lose her later. What is it going to matter? It's what your heart wants. If your heart wants the baby, you're going to be devastated if something happens. It doesn't matter how far along you get. So I had a great pregnancy the whole time, but near the end, she wasn't moving as much, and so I went in twice, and both times they sent me home. And then the third time that she wasn't really moving the way I thought she should, I went in and I just said, let's go, okay? Let's just go. So this time someone comes in and they're looking, and then someone else comes in and they look, and then another person comes in and they look, and I'm like, what's going on? And they said, sorry, we can't find the heartbeat. Okay, well, what do you need to do to find it? No, the baby's not with us anymore. What are you talking about? We're done. I'm past 40 weeks. What do you mean the baby's not here? And then she showed us where we should be seeing the heart flutter. So what do? You can go home. Labor will happen naturally. Like, can I have an emergency C-section? No, we can't risk your life for a dead fetus. A dead fetus? She's my daughter. She has a name. Her name is Kennedy Gray. I mean, I think this is why sometimes people can't identify, because they think you didn't have anything with your baby. And I said, yes, I did. I had a whole life together with her. I knew where we would live, what kind of clothes we would wear, the love that I would give. We decided to stay and get induced. The pain was a lot, so I had an epidural, and they're telling me about the 1% of people who get paralyzed or die, and I'm like, I don't want to hear your statistics. You know, your rare percentages, because now I'm a rare percentage. What's the percentage of 26,000 babies that are stillborn? Because that seems like a large number. When Miss Kennedy came out, everything felt like it was in slow motion. I didn't cry. I just watched my family cry. I was laying with my hand was swollen and I had this IV in, so I couldn't touch her the way I wanted to. And then I asked Carl, my husband, if he wanted to hold her. And he said, no. And I said, okay. But just remember, what you don't do now, you're never going to get a chance to do again. So he held her. My in-laws held her. My mother held her. My sister, I held her. Our pastor prayed over her. And the nurses did something for her with the memorial box, you know. And I put clothes on her, and then we took pictures, and we sang to her. We took a video. They say that it's natural to want to place blame, especially on the doctors. And in a situation like this, where I went in multiple times, and the worst happens, how can you feel nothing but blame? She shouldn't have died. She was a fighter. You know, it hurts when people aren't taking responsibility. She had a nuchal cord and a true knot. You want to hear, I'm sorry. There's no moral anything in you that you can't say, I'm sorry. Not a single one of them said it. We had 2 children, both 15 from other relationships. My 17-year-old, she was unexpected pregnancy. We weren't married, and we were still in the sketchy stage of unexpected pregnancy. We weren't, sure if it was going to go long term. So when I became pregnant with her, it was a very long decision, and we were in such limbo. I'd been a single mom before, and I didn't want to do that to her, another child. So the day before the scheduled abortion, I canceled it, and then I tried to go back, and the doctor said no, that I'd have to wait, 2 weeks, because I was too wishy-washy. So we decided to keep her. I had a lot of feeling, scared, but when we were a year and a half, the baby was a year and a half old, we got married, and my husband, he doesn't like a whole lot of kids, but. So when I got pregnant again, I actually was on birth control, but we were in a very good place this time, and we were married, and this happened. So we talked about what to do about, going through with it. So we did. We'll talk about birth control later. Went to the 20-week ultrasound and confirmed complete placenta previa, where the placenta grows over the cervix. So I would just have to have a C-section, just really bummed out. But thought to myself, whatever's going to be the safest, I obviously want her to get out safe. So not to mention there's lots of risks for me, but, I just wanted to make sure that she was going to come home safe. The idea was to get her home, whether it meant bed rest or not being on work, just get her home. At 26 weeks, which was Valentine's Day and our anniversary, everything looked good. She was growing fine. She always had good, strong movement. I nicknamed her Thumper, from Bambi, because I could always know where she was because of her feet, kicking. But later that week, she didn't move, and in the morning when I ate, I decided I was going to call. So I called the doctor's office, and the nurse said, just, get right down to labor and delivery, and we'll check you out. It's going to be okay. So I went downstairs, and I told my husband, she's, lazy, and I haven't felt her move this morning, so I'll be right back. I'm going to go to the doctor's, and I left him there with our 3 kids. And I got to the hospital, and they put the monitors on me, and she looked for the heartbeat, and there was nothing. And I told myself, no, they're going to find it. And then she said, why didn't you come in earlier? And I was in disbelief. So obviously I felt like she knew there was something wrong, because she asked me that question, and she said, okay, well, I'll get a different Doppler, because sometimes, this doesn't work. So at this point I called my husband, and I said, you need to get to the hospital now. They can't find her heartbeat. Get Mom to come over. I need you here now. And I remember sitting there, and I remember knowing that she was gone. So the doctor that was in had just found out that I had placenta previa and said that there was, a lot of risks, and that she wanted to wait until Monday when they had full staff in case I started to bleed out. And they actually didn't give me too many options. She said, you'll just have to go home. And my parents and my husband's uncle were asking if we could just stay in the hospital. And they asked me, and I said, I want to go home. I want my kids to say goodbye. I can remember just being in a daze. Nobody knew what to do. I was just crying hysterically. Everybody was crying. I remember lying in bed with my husband and us just rubbing her. Just laying there with her. We all went back to the hospital for the delivery and for the C-section, that would happen around 9 o'clock, and the staff there, they were amazing. The day before, one of the nurses had given us this book, When Hello Means Goodbye. And she told us about this organization, Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep, and there's these photographers that will come out and take pictures of her. And my husband and I looked at her like, what? You want to take pictures of our dead baby? What the fuck are you thinking? But we went home and we talked about it and decided that we wanted the photographer, so Rosa, the nurse who'd been there the night before, she was maybe 30, somewhere around my age, and she was just amazing. She was trying to take care of me as much as possible, and I could see the tears in her eyes because she was going through this with me. And she was holding my hand and telling me exactly what to do for the spinal and how it's going to make me feel. And one of the doctors came in and told them, we have Princess Yasmina coming out. We have a princess coming today. I knew the doctor was all ready, and they hadn't brought my husband in yet. And I heard the anesthesiologist saying, she's on the spinal, we need to start. And then the other doctor saying, well, aren't we going to get the the pediatrician down here, and someone must have given him a dirty look because he went, "Oh, I forgot." And then at that point, I just started screaming for my husband, and he came into the room, and I started feeling all the medication just take over my body, and my husband was holding my head, telling me I was going to be okay, and he was crying, and then I could feel her gone. They had wrapped her in a blanket. My husband was holding her and her head on my shoulder. I was so unprepared to see her beautiful little face. I just remember looking at him and him holding her and thinking, this is our little girl. And she's gone. And I guess he gave me the morphine, which I should have known was going to do to me. And I was really incapable of being with her the way I wanted to. I wanted to lay her on my chest and kiss her face and kiss her lips, and I just couldn't do it. And I remember trying to pull the blanket back, and I couldn't, and my husband asking me, "What are you trying to do?" And I said, "I just want to see her hands. I just want to see her feet." I pulled out her hands and feet from me. I just wanted her to hold my hand. I didn't have enough strength. I was just trying to get every moment I could with her. I can't remember saying goodbye. I don't remember if I said goodbye to her. We had a memorial for her about 2 weeks later. And we cremated her. And she's at home with us now. The only place that I could ever let her be. I kiss her urn every morning before I leave for work. We have a huge shelf with all the things that our friends gave to her. And I have the 2 ultrasound pictures, the one where you can see her face and hand really well, and the other one where you see her foot. And then I have a little thumper charm. I added her name to my arm. My oldest daughter is on my leg, and my other daughter's on my back, and I added Thumper to my arm, and she's kind of hidden in these flowers, so you can't really see her at first, which is kind of how I feel she is, because I can't see her, but I know she's there. In some ways, the hardest thing to do is to have to tell someone who's seen me pregnant. It's like, I don't want to have to tell you this devastating news. I mean, I don't want to have to deal with how you're going to feel about it, to put on top of how I'm feeling about it, then how I feel about you feeling about it. So, of course, people say stupid things, right? So, like someone Jeff was working with, you're like, you're young, you can have more. Like one of those things that all the people who had losses say that people say to them, you know? Just stupid fucking things that people say. But our friends were great. They organized to pay our rent for a month. People brought us food every day. It was just like this huge community of people that had my back, you know, had our back. It was incredible. It was really good for our emotional health. We built an altar, and we had all the elements there, you know. And all the stuff that people had given to us, I still have as ashes. I mean, ashes for a baby are very big. Did a lot of drinking. A lot of drinking. A lot of crying, a lot of laughing. When we were in a fog of grief, one of the ways that it's manifested for me was staying up late at night drinking and being on the internet. It was like, felt a really strong kinship for women who had lost their children to miscarriage, stillbirth, disease, war, poverty. I mean, it's like it's like this thunderbolt out of the blue. It's so isolating because you've never heard of this happening. So talking about it, like that it's happened to people you know you can survive it, like you're not alone. But grief is like this universal thing, right? It connects us all together. Like anyone can suffer, anyone can go through like this, a loss that seems unbearable. And I think about, some of the various systems that we live under now that push people to turn their grief into anger and rage and hatred. But I think there's more natural impulse to be like connected over it. One of the things that's been huge for me is having another child. I was always only going to have one. Our daughter Natalie's a teenager now, and she's always known. I mean, we have this photo album with pictures and of Misha, and I remember showing them to Natalie when she was 3. And I'm like, is this too young? But we did it. She totally got it. This piece around just how much I love my kid and how special she seems to me, and feeling like if Misha hadn't died, I wouldn't have her, wouldn't have Natalie. I guess it's part of that survival piece, a much more compassionate person than I was 15 years ago, a lot more patient, more calm, more grounded in general. And I think it really impacts my parenting. So it's like if you get pregnant, you're agreeing with yourself and the world to go forward and have the baby. You're also risking this loss. You can't just say women who get pregnant should just have the baby and give it up for adoption, It's not a light thing to get pregnant. The body changes. Your entire life changes. Whether you keep the baby or even if the baby lives, it's a huge fucking deal. So I want a world where everyone who wants to have a child can have a child. And that requires economic justice and racial justice, and it's not justice if it means that you can only choose not to. You have to be able to choose to as well. And that means access to health care and food and adequate resources to raise a wanted child. I think every woman should be able to decide if she's going to have children, when she's going to have children, or how many, or not at all. Those choices should be available to every woman. Over the last 9 years since Avery died, I've lobbied Congress 3 times to pass legislation to prevent stillbirth. And finally, at the end of 2014, that legislation passed. But every time I lobbied, I got met with, is this about abortion? Is this a pro-life thing? Like you have to know my positionality in order to know whether or not you're going to support what it is I'm doing. I think the question that I asked myself when I wanted to marshal all these resources and all of these stories together. What might happen if we heard from the women it happened to, imagined ourselves in their places? How might we change? How might we accept how people choose to or choose not to? How we remember and how we say goodbye.
I think that this piece is particularly emotional, and I know that there's a lot of that happens. I think so. We just kind of collectively take a breath, maybe, and then we'll ask Dr. Perez to give her feedback to Suzanne, and then of course your input and response. So, are you good?
Yeah. I don't know. I just want to be sensitive. I don't know how long I went.
We're good.
Okay.
You're good.
You're perfect, actually.
Thank you for coming.
And there's a sign-in sheet somewhere.
Oh, okay. The sign-in sheet over there?
It went that way.
Does anybody need the sign-in sheet?
Yeah, y'all sign in for us.
Thank you.
Helps us keep count all kinds of stuff.
Thanks.
Great.